the man woke from unconsciousness to find an animal licking his face. Trembling with fear, he quickly turned his head and saw it was just a goat. Confirming there was no danger, he breathed a sigh of relief, removed his shattered goggles, but when he saw the scene before him, his eyes widened in terror. He was trapped on a bare cliff, suspended more than 10 meters below the summit. Beneath him was a bottomless precipice. The height was at least 1,000 meters. In despair, he looked up, found his parachute stuck in a dead tree, looking ready to break at any moment. In urgent need, he immediately turned to save himself. Touching the rock wall, he found it wasn't solid stone, but a thick layer of salt deposit, so he quickly devised a plan. First, he took out a dagger, then removed his shoes, threading the dagger through the toe, to make improvised climbing shoes. Next, he drew 2 more daggers from his chest, kicked hard with his legs to swing into the air, and used the momentum to drive the daggers into the rock wall. Using his hands and feet like this, he began climbing upward with great difficulty. However, after climbing just 3 or 4 meters, the thin daggers couldn't support his weight, and suddenly snapped in two. He lost his balance, slid down the wall, and returned to where he started. To make matters worse, the fragile dead tree began to break at the roots, threatening to drag him and the parachute into the abyss. At this critical moment, he summoned incredible strength. He struggled to turn around, pressed his toes against the cliff, and frantically cut the parachute ropes with his dagger. Just as the tree fell, he severed the ropes, and narrowly escaped death. But safety was only temporary. Once his strength gave out, he would plummet into the abyss. He looked up, and saw the goat bracing its front and hind legs against opposite sides of a crevice, effortlessly climbing the seemingly smooth, steep wall. Witnessing this, hope for survival reignited in his heart. Summoning his courage, he released his grip on the wall, leapt sideways, and wedged himself into the crevice. Fortunately, the gap wasn't too wide. His height was just enough to fit sideways inside. Though it looked perilous, the method worked. After a brief rest, he gathered his strength and inched upward bit by bit. Soon, he climbed along the crevice to a small protruding ledge, but his joy was short-lived. He saw the cliff summit was still 2 or 3 meters away. Just then, the fragile ledge suddenly began to crumble, giving him no time to think of a solution. In desperation, he instinctively turned, stepped onto the back of a goat, and like a monkey, used his hands and feet to leap up and grab the cliff edge. Overjoyed, he could hardly believe he'd made it, but just as he was about to pull himself up, a large ram with fierce eyes approached him, and suddenly charged, nearly knocking him off the cliff. Frustrated and angry, the man couldn't understand why the ram was attacking him. As the ram charged again, he let go of the edge, grabbed its horns tightly, and tried to drag it down with him. To his surprise, once caught, the ram didn't struggle wildly to push him off. Instead, it stepped backward, pulling him up bit by bit, until the exhausted man was safely dragged onto the cliff and laid on the grass. Stunned, the man stared at the ram in disbelief, unable to accept that it had saved him.